Have you ever felt drained after spending time with someone, as if their negativity just rubbed off on you? Or perhaps you found yourself walking on eggshells around certain people, unsure of how to keep the peace. Why do some people have such a strong influence on our emotions, even when we don't want them to? Imagine this. You've had a wonderful day, feeling calm and content, and then you encounter someone who seems to carry a heavy cloud of negativity. Suddenly, your mood shifts. The peace you felt moments ago seems distant. How does this happen? Why does their energy feel so powerful, even though you don't want to be affected by it? These are the signs of toxic people, those whose presence can drain your energy, leaving you feeling emotionally and mentally exhausted. It can be hard to navigate relationships with toxic people, but today we will explore how Buddhism offers tools to understand and deal with these individuals in a way that brings peace to your life. Welcome to Wisdom Woven, a channel dedicated to guiding you through life's challenges with Buddhist wisdom. In this video, we will discuss simple yet powerful ways to protect your inner peace and create boundaries with toxic people. You'll learn how Buddhist teachings can help you maintain calmness, compassion, and clarity, even in the most difficult interactions. There are so many views on this channel, but only 0.2% subscribe. So please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel to support us and receive more insightful content like this. Stay with us till the end, because what you're about to learn can truly change the way you approach toxic people in your life. Let's dive into how we can find peace, even in challenging relationships, recognizing the signs of toxic people. When we talk about toxic people, we aren't just referring to people who have a bad day every now and then. Toxic people are those whose behavior consistently affects our well-being in negative ways. They may not even realize the impact they have on others, but their actions, words, and energy leave lasting marks on our emotional health. So how can we recognize these toxic people in our lives? In the world of Buddhism, we are taught that everything is interconnected, and everything, including human relationships, flows in harmony when we align ourselves with the right understanding. Toxic people disrupt this harmony. Their actions are like small stones dropped in a calm pond, creating ripples that disturb the peace. But the key is to recognize these ripples before they grow into a storm. The first sign of a toxic person is the constant need for drama. Have you ever been around someone who seems to thrive on chaos? They might always have a story of something going wrong, or someone to blame for their problems. These people seem to create or attract conflict wherever they go. They live in a cycle of emotional highs and lows, and they expect others to join them on this unpredictable ride. Their drama can be contagious if we allow ourselves to become involved, drawing us away from our inner peace. Recognizing this pattern early on is the first step in maintaining our emotional stability. Another sign of a toxic person is manipulation. Toxic individuals often try to control others to suit their needs. They may use guilt, fear, or shame to manipulate how we think or feel. In Buddhism, we learn that attachment and desire are the roots of suffering. A toxic person thrives on the attachment of others, using it to their advantage. You might feel guilty about saying no, or feel obligated to do things that you don't want to do simply because this person knows how to play on your emotions. Sometimes, toxic people will make you feel like you're always walking on eggshells. Do you find yourself constantly adjusting your behavior to avoid conflict or their anger? Maybe you feel that you have to be careful about what you say, do, or even think, because this person has the ability to react in unpredictable and hurtful ways. They make the environment tense and stressful, and you begin to lose a sense of yourself in the process. Toxic people often lack empathy. They may be so wrapped up in their own world that they cannot understand or care about the feelings of others. In Buddhism, empathy is one of the key practices for cultivating compassion. However, toxic people seem unable to connect with the suffering of others. When someone shares their struggles or emotions, a toxic person may respond with indifference, judgment, or even ridicule. They might not understand the importance of showing kindness or care for others' feelings. Another behavior that is common among toxic people is the constant need for validation. These individuals may demand constant attention and praise, even when they have done nothing to deserve it. In Buddhism, we understand that true happiness comes from within, not from external sources. But toxic people rely on the approval of others to feel good about themselves. Their self-worth is fragile and dependent on how others see them. When they don't get the validation they crave, they may lash out or become resentful. Gaslighting is another sign of a toxic person. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation where a person makes you question your own reality. They may tell you that you're overreacting, imagining things, or being too sensitive when you express concerns about their behavior. This creates confusion, making you doubt your perception of events. In Buddhism, we are taught to develop mindfulness so that we can clearly see the truth in every moment. Toxic people try to cloud your perception of reality, making it harder for you to trust yourself and your instincts. Toxic people also have a way of making everything about themselves. They have an exaggerated sense of entitlement, believing that the world revolves around their needs and desires. They might talk incessantly about their own problems, never asking about yours, or they may make decisions that impact others without considering anyone else's feelings or needs. They believe their struggles are more important than anyone else's, and they expect others to cater to them without question. In Buddhism, we learn about the concept of interdependence, the idea that we are all connected, and our actions affect the well-being of others. Toxic people disregard this principle. They act as though they are the only ones who matter, leaving others feeling unheard, unimportant, and undervalued. Jealousy and envy are common traits in toxic individuals. Instead of celebrating the successes of others, they may secretly resent others' happiness or accomplishments. They may try to bring you down to make themselves feel better. In Buddhism, we practice contentment and gratitude, but toxic people are never satisfied. They are always comparing themselves to others and trying to diminish the joy of those around them. Toxic people often lack accountability for their actions. They rarely admit when they are wrong, and they may never apologize. When confronted with their mistakes, they deflect blame onto others or make excuses for their behavior. This lack of responsibility creates frustration in others who are left feeling unheard and invalidated. In Buddhism, we are taught that self-awareness and accountability are vital for growth and peace. But toxic people avoid self-reflection, instead choosing to blame others for their actions. Now, take a moment to reflect. Do you know someone who fits these descriptions? Or perhaps you have been the one exhibiting some of these toxic behaviors without even realizing it. Buddhism encourages us to look deeply into ourselves and examine our actions and intentions. If we find ourselves being affected by toxic people, we can start by looking inward. Ask yourself, am I allowing this person to disturb my peace? Am I enabling their toxic behavior by not setting boundaries? Recognizing the signs of a toxic person is the first step toward taking control of your own emotional well-being. But recognition alone is not enough. In the next part, we will discuss how to use the wisdom of Buddhism to protect yourself from the negative effects of toxic individuals. We will explore the importance of setting boundaries, cultivating compassion, and maintaining mindfulness in the face of toxic behavior. Remember, the peace you seek is already within you. It's simply a matter of recognizing and protecting it. So take a deep breath and prepare yourself for the journey ahead. The tools you need to deal with toxic people are closer than you think. Buddhist teachings on compassion and boundaries. In life, we often encounter people who seem to drain us, who take more than they give, and who leave us feeling worse than before we met them. These are the toxic people, the ones who seem to suck the life and energy out of any room they enter. So, how can we deal with such people without losing our inner peace? How can we maintain our compassion and still create healthy boundaries? In Buddhism, we are taught to navigate these situations with wisdom, kindness, and understanding. To begin, we must first understand that compassion does not mean allowing others to walk all over us. Compassion in Buddhism is the recognition of the suffering in others, and the desire to help them without being overwhelmed by their pain. It's a deep understanding that all beings experience suffering, whether they show it or not, and that their behavior, whether toxic or not, is often a reflection of their own inner turmoil. However, this compassion should never come at the cost of our own well-being. Imagine a glass of water. If you keep pouring water into it without ever stopping to let the glass be emptied, it will eventually overflow. Similarly, if we continuously give compassion without taking time to recharge, we risk being overwhelmed and burned out. That's why setting boundaries is essential. In Buddhism, We learn that boundaries are not walls built to keep others away, but rather guidelines that protect our mental and emotional health while allowing us to interact with others in a compassionate way. Setting boundaries does not mean cutting people off, but rather understanding where your limits lie and communicating those limits with kindness and respect. This is something Buddha taught. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. We cannot pour from an empty cup, and we must first care for ourselves before we can care for others. Consider the story of the Buddha and his disciples. One day, a man came to the Buddha and began shouting insults at him, accusing him of all sorts of things. The Buddha listened calmly without reacting. After a long while, the man grew tired and left. The Buddha turned to his disciples and said, "If someone offers you a gift, and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The disciples replied, "It belongs to the one who offered it." The Buddha then explained, "In the same way, when a person offers you insults and you do not accept them, they remain with the person who offered them." This is a perfect example of how we can remain compassionate while not allowing others to dictate our emotional state. When dealing with toxic people, we must also remember that we cannot change others. The Buddha taught that we are responsible for our own actions, thoughts, and emotions, but not for those of others. If someone is acting out of anger, fear, or ignorance, it is their karma, not ours. We can still show compassion, but we must not take on their pain as our own. By maintaining compassion for the person while setting clear boundaries, we protect ourselves from being drawn into their negativity. The practice of loving kindness, or metta, is another tool we can use to deal with toxic people. Loving kindness is the wish for others to be happy, safe, and free from suffering. But it does not mean we accept toxic behavior. It simply means we send positive thoughts and intentions to others without allowing their negativity to consume us. For example, when you encounter a toxic person, you can silently repeat a mantra such as, "May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. May you live in peace." This practice helps to shift your focus from the negativity of the other person to your own intention of kindness. It also helps to remind you that the other person's suffering is not yours to bear. In Buddhism, we are taught to develop a sense of detachment, which is different from indifference. Detachment is not about cutting off relationships or becoming cold and distant. It is about not allowing ourselves to be swept away by the emotions or actions of others. Just as a lotus flower grows from the mud but remains untouched by it, we can interact with toxic people without letting their negativity penetrate our inner peace. Detachment allows us to observe toxic behavior without becoming entangled in it. One key teaching from Buddhism is the importance of mindfulness in our interactions. Mindfulness helps us to remain aware of our thoughts, feelings, and reactions in any given moment. When we encounter a toxic person, we can use mindfulness to stay present and aware of how their behavior is affecting us. Are we feeling angry, frustrated, sad? By recognizing these emotions as they arise, we can choose how to respond, rather than reacting impulsively. Mindfulness allows us to maintain control over our emotions and to respond with wisdom rather than knee-jerk reactions. Another powerful Buddhist tool is the practice of forgiveness. Toxic people often cause us pain, but holding on to that pain can keep us trapped in a cycle of negativity. Forgiveness does not mean excusing their behavior. It simply means releasing the hold that their actions have on our hearts. The Buddha taught that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. When we hold on to resentment, we only harm ourselves. Forgiveness allows us to let go of that poison and to free ourselves from the chains of bitterness and anger. But how do we forgive when someone has hurt us deeply? The process begins with recognizing that the pain we feel is a result of our attachment to the person or the situation. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from attachment and desire. When we can let go of our attachment to how things should be and accept things as they are, we create space for healing. Forgiveness is not for the other person. It is for our own peace of mind. In dealing with toxic people, the key is to maintain a balance of compassion and boundaries. Compassion allows us to see the suffering in others and to respond with kindness, while boundaries protect us from being overwhelmed by their negativity. Detachment and mindfulness help us to stay centered and focused on our own well-being. while forgiveness frees us from the emotional baggage that toxic people try to impose on us. Ultimately, Buddhism teaches that we cannot control the behavior of others, but we can control how we respond to them. By cultivating compassion, setting healthy boundaries, and practicing mindfulness and forgiveness, we can protect our inner peace while still interacting with the world in a kind and loving way. Toxic people will always be a part of life, but how we deal with them is what truly matters. When we live in accordance with the wisdom of Buddhism, we can face any challenge, no matter how toxic, with grace, understanding, and inner peace. The role of mindfulness in navigating toxic relationships. In the stillness of the moment, we find our true power. Mindfulness, the practice of being fully present, allows us to see things clearly without the distortions of past experiences or future worries. When dealing with toxic people, mindfulness becomes the tool that lets us observe the situation with detachment. It gives us the ability to respond rather than react. It is this pause, this moment of awareness, that allows us to decide how to engage with someone who drains our energy. Let's take a moment to think about what happens when you are caught in a difficult conversation. Often, our emotions rise: frustration, anger, or sadness. We may feel the urge to defend ourselves, to react in the same negative way the other person is treating us. But here's the truth. This is where mindfulness can step in and change everything. When you are aware of your emotions and your reactions, you can choose a different path. You can observe the situation without letting it control you. Consider the example of a conversation with a toxic person at work. They might criticize you harshly or try to undermine your efforts. Your initial instinct might be to defend yourself, to prove them wrong. But mindfulness asks you to pause, to breathe, to step back for a moment and recognize the space between stimulus and response. This space is where your power lies. By practicing mindfulness, you can choose how to respond, not out of anger or hurt, but with clarity and peace. When we react impulsively to toxic people, we often find ourselves caught in a cycle of negativity. One negative comment leads to another, and before we know it, we are involved in a heated exchange that only makes things worse. Mindfulness allows us to break this cycle. It teaches us that we don't need to be controlled by our emotions. Instead, we can acknowledge them, let them pass, and choose to engage in a way that brings us peace. Buddhism teaches that everything is impermanent. This includes our emotions. Just as the clouds in the sky move and change, so too do our feelings. When we practice mindfulness, we become aware of the transient nature of our emotions. We realize that no feeling, whether positive or negative, lasts forever. This awareness helps us to not be swept away by the storm of negative emotions that toxic people may bring. We can stand firm, anchored in the present moment, knowing that this too shall pass. One of the core aspects of mindfulness is acceptance. When dealing with toxic people, we don't need to accept their behavior, but we do need to accept that they are behaving in this way, and that it is outside our control. The more we resist a situation, the more we create inner turmoil. Mindfulness teaches us to accept the reality of the situation without getting caught up in it. This doesn't mean we condone their behavior. It simply means we recognize it for what it is and choose not to let it disturb our peace. This brings us to another aspect of mindfulness, the ability to remain calm in the face of conflict. Think of it as standing in the center of a storm, where everything around you is chaotic, but you remain steady. Mindfulness helps us find that center. It helps us to remain calm, even when others are stirring up negativity. This calmness is not passive. It is a powerful force, allowing us to navigate difficult situations with grace. When you practice mindfulness, you begin to see that you don't need to fix or change the toxic person. You don't need to convince them to see things your way. Instead, you focus on how you respond to the situation. You learn to maintain your peace, regardless of what is happening around you. In this way, mindfulness shifts the focus from changing the external circumstances to transforming your internal state. It teaches you that your peace is not dependent on anyone else. It is yours to cultivate and yours to protect. Sometimes, the best way to deal with toxic people is simply to give them less of your energy. This doesn't mean ignoring them or avoiding conflict. It means choosing to respond thoughtfully rather than automatically. It means being aware of how much energy you are giving to the situation. In mindfulness, We are encouraged to practice discernment, knowing when to engage and when to step back. Not every battle is worth fighting. Not every argument is worth having. Sometimes, the best way to deal with toxicity is to not give it more attention than it deserves. Mindfulness also teaches us to observe our thoughts. When we are in the presence of toxic people, our thoughts often become negative. We may think, "Why are they treating me this way?" Or, "I can't stand this behavior." But these thoughts only fuel our frustration. Mindfulness helps us become aware of these thoughts and gently shift our focus. Instead of ruminating on how wrong they are, we can focus on maintaining our own peace. We can choose to let go of thoughts that don't serve us and embrace thoughts that bring us calm. This practice of mindfulness extends beyond just the moments of interaction. It can be cultivated throughout the day. When we take time to meditate or practice mindfulness in our daily lives, we strengthen our ability to stay present and grounded, no matter what challenges come our way. Just as a tree's roots anchor it firmly to the ground, mindfulness anchors us to the present moment, allowing us to weather the storms of life with resilience and clarity. In Buddhism, mindfulness is also connected to the concept of right speech. This means that we choose our words carefully, with awareness of how they might affect others. When dealing with toxic people, it can be easy to respond with harsh words or a defensive tone. But mindfulness helps us choose a response that is measured, calm, and compassionate. Right speech encourages us to speak in a way that uplifts rather than contributes to further negativity. Sometimes, mindfulness may lead us to take a step back entirely. We may realize that the best way to deal with a toxic person is to create some distance. This is not about running away or avoiding conflict, but about protecting our inner peace. If a relationship or situation is consistently toxic and draining, it may be time to set a boundary. Mindfulness helps us recognize when this is necessary and gives us the clarity to do so without guilt. Ultimately, mindfulness is a practice that requires patience and dedication. It is not something that happens overnight, but over time, as we continue to bring awareness to our thoughts, emotions, and actions. The more we practice, the more natural it becomes to respond to toxic people with calmness and wisdom, rather than reacting out of anger or fear. It becomes easier to see the situation clearly, without being swept away by the emotions that toxic people may trigger in us. In the face of toxicity, mindfulness allows us to remain in the present moment, where true peace resides. It helps us to detach from the drama and to find stillness in the midst of chaos. By practicing mindfulness, we can transform our relationship with toxic people, not by changing them, but by changing our response. This is the essence of Buddhist wisdom, the understanding that our peace is not dependent on external circumstances, but on how we choose to engage with them. And in this practice, we find true freedom. As we move forward in this video, let's remember that mindfulness is a gift we can give ourselves. It is the key to maintaining our peace, no matter what challenges we face. By practicing mindfulness, we can navigate relationships with toxic people with greater ease, wisdom, and compassion. Detachment, the key to inner freedom. Let us talk about a very important lesson, detachment. It is a simple, yet profound concept in Buddhism, and it holds the key to our freedom, especially when we are dealing with toxic people. Imagine a tree standing strong in the wind. It does not hold on to the breeze, it simply allows it to pass. The tree is not disturbed by the wind, yet it bends gracefully, not resisting. This is what detachment is about. It is not about ignoring or shutting out the world, but about not allowing the world to control you. When we face toxic people, we often get caught up in their behavior, their anger, their negativity. We begin to believe that their actions somehow define us. But true peace comes when we understand that their actions have nothing to do with our inner calm. Their storm cannot uproot us if we do not let it. Detachment does not mean we stop caring. It does not mean we become cold or indifferent. On the contrary, it means we care, but without becoming overly attached to the outcome. We can show compassion, but we do not have to be dragged into their emotional turmoil. We can help, but we do not have to carry their burden as if it is ours to bear. Think about a flower growing in a field. It does not try to control the weather. It simply blooms, trusting that the sun and rain will come and go. It doesn't demand, it just exists. In the same way, we can live our lives, knowing that toxic people may come and go, But we are not here to bend to their will. We are here to bloom, no matter what happens around us. When you feel trapped in a relationship with a toxic person, remember that you have the power to detach, not from the person, but from their negativity. This does not mean you become rude or neglectful, but rather that you stop giving them power over your feelings. You do not have to react to everything they say or do. You can choose to remain calm, centered, and unaffected by their outbursts. Detachment is about creating space between yourself and their actions. It's about recognizing that their words or behavior do not have to dictate your emotional state. You are the master of your own emotions, not the people around you. If you allow others to control your emotions, you give away your peace, and that is the greatest gift you have. The Buddha teaches us that attachment leads to suffering. The more we cling to things, whether it's a toxic relationship, a certain outcome, or a specific person, the more we are bound by suffering. When we detach, we free ourselves from that cycle. We begin to see things for what they truly are, without being caught up in the emotional reactions they provoke. We become like the clear sky, untouched by the clouds that pass through it. Now, detachment also means that we stop trying to control others. We cannot change people. Toxic people are often the way they are because of their own suffering, their own unresolved emotions. We cannot fix them, and it is not our responsibility to do so. Our responsibility is to care for ourselves, to protect our own peace, and to keep our hearts open without becoming a target for their negativity. Think of yourself as a candle. You can shine brightly, lighting the way for others. But if someone comes and blows out your flame, it is not your fault. You must protect your light. Detachment means not letting others extinguish your flame, not letting their darkness swallow your light. In Buddhist practice, detachment is often misunderstood. People think it means becoming indifferent or distant, but it is the opposite. It means fully engaging with life and others, but doing so without becoming entangled in unhealthy attachments. It is about giving without expecting, loving without attachment, and being present without getting lost in someone else's drama. How can you practice detachment with toxic people? Start by recognizing that their behavior is a reflection of their own suffering. When someone is angry or negative, it is not about you. It is about them. This understanding is key. When you stop taking their behavior personally, you begin to detach from it. You stop absorbing their negativity and instead remain grounded in your own sense of peace. One of the most powerful ways to practice detachment is through mindfulness. By staying present in the moment, you create a buffer between your inner world and the outer chaos. When a toxic person speaks to you with anger or negativity, take a deep breath. Stay grounded. Don't react immediately. Observe their words, but do not let them consume you. You can respond with compassion, but without getting emotionally tangled in their storm. Remember, detachment is not about running away from people. It is about understanding that you cannot change them, and that their behavior is not your responsibility. It is about realizing that you are in control of your own peace, and no one has the right to disturb it unless you allow them to. This understanding frees you from the need to control others or to fix them, and it brings you back to the present moment, where you can choose your own responses. Another way to practice detachment is by setting clear boundaries. Let people know, in a calm and respectful way, that you are not available for their negativity. It's important to express your limits. When you set boundaries, you are not rejecting the person, but protecting your own peace. It is an act of self-care, not selfishness. And when you practice detachment, it becomes easier to forgive. You stop holding on to the resentment or anger that toxic people may provoke in you. Instead, you forgive them, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. Holding on to anger or hurt only weighs you down. Forgiveness lightens your heart and allows you to let go of the emotional burden. Detachment, at its core, is about letting go. Letting go of the need to control, of the need to please, of the need to be accepted. Letting go of toxic relationships that drain your energy and steal your peace. It is about stepping into the freedom of knowing that you are enough, just as you are, and that your worth does not depend on others' opinions or actions. As you practice detachment, you will find that your life becomes lighter. You will no longer feel as though you are at the mercy of others' emotions or behaviors. You will stand strong, like the tree in the wind, swaying but never breaking. Your peace will be unshakable, because you have learned to detach from that which does not serve you. So, remember this: detachment is not about turning away from life. It is about engaging with life fully, without becoming entangled in the drama of others. It is about protecting your own peace, caring for yourself, and allowing others to be as they are without letting them control your emotions. The path of detachment leads to true freedom, the freedom to live your life with grace, compassion, and unshakable inner peace. Embrace detachment, and you will find that you are no longer at the mercy of toxic people. You will be free. You will be at peace. And that peace will radiate outward, touching everyone around you, transforming negative energy with loving kindness. In life, we encounter all sorts of people, some of whom carry with them an energy that feels heavy, draining, and often difficult to handle. Toxic people, whose negativity seems to linger, can leave us feeling unsettled and exhausted. But there is a way to transform this negative energy, not by fighting it, but by responding with something that is more powerful: loving kindness. Loving kindness is not about merely being nice or tolerating others. It is about cultivating a deep sense of compassion for yourself and others, even those who may not always treat you kindly. When we approach toxic people with loving kindness, we do not allow their energy to consume ours. Instead, we create a space for ourselves where peace can reside, regardless of external circumstances. In Buddhism, loving kindness, or metta, is considered a vital practice. It is the practice of wishing well for others, no matter how difficult they may be. This doesn't mean you have to accept harmful behavior or allow someone to treat you poorly. Loving kindness is about responding to negativity with a calm heart, without getting caught up in the storm. Imagine for a moment that you are sitting in a quiet garden. The air is fresh, the sun is warm, and you are surrounded by nature's beauty. Suddenly, a gust of wind blows through, rustling the leaves and disturbing the peace. The wind represents the negativity that others bring into your life. You could react by trying to fight the wind, but it would be a losing battle. The wind is too strong, and your efforts to resist would only tire you out. Instead, you choose to remain calm and rooted, letting the wind blow through without disturbing your inner peace. This is the essence of loving kindness. It's not about controlling others, but about controlling how you respond to them. When you practice loving kindness, you are not allowing their negativity to take root in your heart. Instead, you offer them kindness, not because they deserve it, but because it helps you maintain your peace. You choose to respond to them with understanding, compassion, and a desire for their well-being, even if their actions are difficult. It's important to understand that practicing loving kindness does not mean you have to engage with toxic people in the same way. You can still set boundaries, protect your energy, and distance yourself when needed. Loving kindness allows you to do all of this without harboring anger, resentment, or bitterness. In fact, holding on to these negative emotions only gives the toxic person more power over you. When you practice loving kindness, you free yourself from this power struggle. You stop reacting out of fear, anger, or frustration. Instead, you cultivate a sense of peace within yourself. Even if someone behaves in a toxic way, you remain grounded, calm, and compassionate. You acknowledge their pain, their struggles, and their imperfections, but you do not allow their behavior to dictate your emotions. One of the best ways to begin this practice is by using metta meditation. In this meditation, you start by directing loving kindness toward yourself. You say to yourself, "May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live with ease." This simple practice helps you cultivate a sense of well-being and compassion for yourself. Once you feel this sense of kindness toward yourself, you then extend it to others. First, you may send loving kindness to those you care about, then to those you feel neutral toward, and finally, to those with whom you have conflict. When sending loving kindness to someone toxic, it can feel difficult at first. You might find yourself thinking, "How can I wish well for someone who has hurt me?" But the more you practice, the more you realize that wishing them well does not mean condoning their behavior. It means wishing that they, too, find peace, healing, and happiness. You are not letting them off the hook for their actions, but you are freeing yourself from the grip of anger and resentment. In Buddhism, we are taught that every living being is on their own journey. Some are more enlightened, while others are still struggling with their own suffering. Toxic people are often acting out of their own pain. They may be projecting their unresolved emotions onto others because they have not yet learned to heal themselves. When we understand this, it becomes easier to approach them with compassion, even when their behavior is difficult. You may wonder, but what if they continue to be toxic despite my efforts? The answer is simple. You cannot change other people, but by practicing loving kindness, you change how you respond to them. And in doing so, you shift the energy between you. It's like planting seeds of peace in the ground. Even if the soil is rocky, if you continue to water the seeds with kindness, eventually, they will grow into something beautiful. Loving kindness also has a profound effect on your own well-being. When you practice it, you start to let go of anger and resentment, which can cause emotional and physical stress. Instead, you create a sense of calm and inner peace that shields you from the negative energy of others. This peaceful state doesn't mean that life becomes easier or that people stop being difficult. It simply means that you have created an inner fortress of peace that cannot be easily disturbed. This practice takes time and patience. It requires you to look at toxic people not as enemies, but as fellow beings who, like you, are struggling with their own challenges. The more you practice loving kindness, the more you will feel a sense of freedom. You will no longer feel chained to the negative energy of others. Instead, you will become the calm in the storm. The key to transforming negative energy with loving kindness is not to resist it, but to meet it with peace, compassion, and understanding. When you do this, you stop allowing toxic people to control your emotions. You become the master of your inner peace, and no one, no matter how toxic they may be, can take that away from you. So, whenever you encounter someone whose energy feels heavy, remember this. You do not need to absorb their negativity. Instead, offer them the gift of loving kindness. It may not change them, but it will change you. And in that change, you will find the peace that has always been within you, waiting to be cultivated. The power of forgiveness in healing relationships. In our lives, we often encounter situations where someone wrongs us. It might be a harsh word, a betrayal, or a deep hurt that lingers in our hearts. The weight of these wounds can sometimes feel unbearable. But here's a question. What would happen if you could let go of the anger and pain caused by someone else's actions? What if you could forgive and release the burden that keeps you trapped in negativity? Forgiveness is not just for the person who wronged you. It's a gift you give to yourself, a way to free your heart from the chains of bitterness and resentment. You see, holding on to anger and hurt only poisons your own mind. It clouds your judgment and prevents you from experiencing true peace. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is like the first rays of sunlight breaking through a dark storm. It has the power to heal, to lift the weight off your shoulders, and to restore your inner balance. In Buddhism, forgiveness is deeply intertwined with compassion. Compassion is the practice of seeing others as they truly are, understanding their suffering, and recognizing that everyone, including those who hurt us, are part of the same human experience. When you forgive, you are not condoning the wrongdoing or excusing the behavior. You are simply choosing to release yourself from the hold it has on you. The Buddha teaches that holding on to anger is like holding a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. The person who holds the coal will burn their own hand long before it reaches the intended target. In the same way, our anger hurts us far more than it ever hurts the person we are angry with. Forgiveness is the act of dropping that hot coal. It's the act of letting go, not for the other person, but for your own peace of mind. Forgiveness does not happen instantly. It takes time and patience, much like the slow and steady growth of a tree. But every step towards forgiveness is a step toward healing. When you practice forgiveness, you begin to release the negative energy that keeps you stuck in the past. You free yourself from the emotional prison that your hurt and resentment have created. And as you let go, you create space for love, compassion, and peace to fill your heart. You might wonder, how do we begin this journey of forgiveness? The first step is to acknowledge the pain. Don't suppress it, don't deny it, but allow yourself to feel it fully. Understand that it's natural to feel hurt when someone wrongs you. It's part of being human. But remember that you have the power to choose how you respond. You can choose to hold on to the pain and let it fester, or you can choose to let it go and heal. The second step is to reflect on the nature of the person who hurt you. Often, people who act in harmful ways are themselves suffering. They may be projecting their own pain, frustration, or fears onto others. By recognizing this, you begin to see them not as enemies but as fellow beings caught in the web of suffering. This understanding can soften your heart and make forgiveness easier. The third step is to let go of the desire for revenge or justice. The Buddha taught that the world is full of impermanence and suffering. Everything changes, and nothing lasts forever. The person who wronged you will also face the consequences of their actions, but that is not your responsibility to decide. Holding on to the desire for justice only prolongs your own suffering. Instead, focus on your own healing and peace. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to continue allowing someone who hurt you to stay in your life. It's possible to forgive someone and still set healthy boundaries. Sometimes, the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself and the other person is to step away and let go. This is not about rejecting the person but about protecting your own well-being. In Buddhism, we learn that our first responsibility is to care for our own minds and hearts. As you practice forgiveness, you may notice a shift in your energy. You will begin to feel lighter, freer, and more at peace with yourself. The act of forgiving allows you to move forward in life without the weight of past hurts holding you back. You begin to see the world through a lens of compassion, understanding that everyone, including you, is doing the best they can with the tools they have at the time. People who hurt others are often trapped in their own suffering, and by forgiving them, you release both them and yourself from the cycle of pain. Forgiveness is not a one-time event. It's a continuous process, one that you must practice over and over again. There will be times when you feel the old wounds reopen, and that's okay. When this happens, simply return to the practice of forgiveness. Each time you forgive, you become stronger, more compassionate, and more at peace with yourself. In time, you will find that the people who once caused you pain no longer have the power to hurt you. Remember, forgiveness is a reflection of your own inner peace. When you forgive, you are not only healing your relationship with others, but also nurturing your own mind and spirit. As you forgive, you let go of the attachments that bind you to the past and open yourself up to a future filled with love, understanding, and freedom. The more you practice forgiveness, the more your heart expands, and the more peace you will experience in your life. In the end, forgiveness is not about the other person. It's about you. It's about choosing to live your life without the burden of anger, resentment, or bitterness. It's about stepping into your own power to heal and transform. When you forgive, you become the architect of your own happiness. You take control of your own peace, and nothing or no one can take that away from you. So, take a moment now and reflect on the people or situations in your life where you are holding on to pain. What would happen if you could release it? What would your life look like if you allowed forgiveness to flow through you? The power to heal is already within you. All you have to do is take the first step, and the journey of forgiveness will begin. Finding strength in solitude and self-reflection. In the midst of chaos, we often forget that within us lies a quiet strength, a peaceful, still place untouched by the noise around us. Life's challenges can seem overwhelming, especially when dealing with toxic people who disrupt our inner calm. But what if, instead of seeking peace in the world around us, we turned inward? What if the strength we need to face these challenges already resides in us? In Buddhism, solitude is not seen as loneliness. It is seen as a source of clarity and strength. When we step away from the noise, the distractions, and the influence of others, we give ourselves the space to reconnect with our true selves. It is in this silence that we begin to hear our own thoughts clearly, without judgment or interference. The mind, usually filled with the chatter of others' opinions, becomes a calm lake, reflecting our deepest truths. Consider this simple truth. When we are constantly surrounded by toxic people or negative energy, we begin to lose sight of who we truly are. We become reactive, caught in the current of others' emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. But when we take a step back, whether through meditation, quiet reflection, or simply spending time alone, we create a space for our own wisdom to emerge. Imagine a tree standing strong in a storm. The wind may blow fiercely, the branches may shake, but the tree remains rooted in the earth. In the same way, Solitude helps us ground ourselves, allowing us to withstand the storms of life without being uprooted. It is during these moments of solitude that we can reflect on our own responses, gain insight into our emotions, and discover how to move forward with strength and grace. When you are surrounded by toxic people, it is easy to lose your sense of self-worth. They may criticize you, belittle you, or drain your energy, and if you're always in their presence, you begin to believe their negativity. But in solitude, you are reminded of your intrinsic value. You reconnect with the core of who you are, not defined by others' judgments or expectations. You begin to realize that you do not need the approval of toxic people to feel good about yourself. Self-reflection is a powerful tool in this process. It is not about self-criticism or regret. It is about understanding our own responses, our triggers, and our desires. Through meditation or simply sitting quietly with ourselves, we can ask, why do I feel upset when this person acts this way? What is it about their behavior that triggers such a strong reaction in me? What can I learn from this experience? Buddhism teaches that suffering arises when we are attached to the idea of how things should be, or when we become entangled in the emotions and actions of others. By stepping into solitude, we can detach from these external influences and gain a fresh perspective. We can see that the actions of toxic people do not define us. We can choose to let go of the need for validation or approval from others, and instead find strength in simply being ourselves. Solitude also provides the opportunity for healing. When we are constantly interacting with toxic individuals, our energy becomes depleted. We may not even realize it at first, but over time, we can become emotionally exhausted. In solitude, we can restore that energy. We can practice self-care, nurture our minds, and rejuvenate our spirits. It is like filling up an empty cup so that we have something to give to the world, rather than constantly running on empty. In Buddhism, there is a practice called retreat, where monks and practitioners withdraw from the world to deepen their meditation and practice. It is in these retreats that they find clarity, peace, and insight. While we may not all have the opportunity to go on a formal retreat, we can still create moments of retreat in our everyday lives. Even a few minutes of quiet time each day can help us regain our balance, calm our minds, and reconnect with our inner strength. By practicing solitude and self-reflection, we learn to navigate the world with a clearer mind and a stronger heart. We no longer allow toxic people to dictate our emotions or our sense of self. Instead, we find strength within ourselves. We become like the tree in the storm, unshaken and grounded in our own truth. This practice of self-reflection is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing process, something we must continually cultivate in our lives. As we grow in this practice, we find that our responses to toxic people become more peaceful and measured. We no longer feel the need to engage in conflict or react emotionally. Instead, we respond from a place of inner calm, knowing that we are in control of our own peace. In Buddhist philosophy, we are taught that true freedom comes when we are no longer bound by the opinions or actions of others. When we find strength in solitude, we begin to realize that we are the masters of our own happiness. No one else can take that away from us unless we allow them to. The key is to protect our inner peace, and solitude is one of the most powerful tools we have to do so. Remember, solitude is not a punishment. It is a gift. It is a time to reconnect with your true self, to heal, and to grow stronger. When you spend time alone, you give yourself the opportunity to reflect on what truly matters in your life. You can begin to ask the important questions. What do I want for myself? What kind of relationships do I want to cultivate? How can I protect my energy from toxic influences? As you continue on this journey of self-reflection, you will find that the influence of toxic people will diminish. You will no longer feel the need to seek their approval or validate their behavior. Instead, you will stand firm in your own truth, knowing that you are enough, just as you are. In Buddhism, there is a practice of mindful detachment, where you observe the actions of others without becoming emotionally entangled in them. This does not mean you stop caring or become cold. Rather, it means you understand that you are not defined by the actions of others. You are not responsible for their behavior, and their toxicity does not have to affect your inner peace. When you find strength in solitude and self-reflection, you empower yourself to handle toxic situations with grace and wisdom. You no longer give toxic people the power to control your emotions or your peace of mind. Instead, you become the calm in the storm, the rock amidst the waves. In the end, solitude is not just about being alone. It is about finding yourself again. It is about rediscovering the peace and strength that already resides within you. When you spend time alone, you create the space to heal, to reflect, and to grow. And when you do, you become a beacon of strength, calm, and wisdom for others to follow, turning challenges into opportunities for growth. In life, challenges are inevitable. It's not a question of whether or not we will face difficulties, but rather how we choose to approach them. Toxic people, just like other challenges, can either break us down or build us up. The choice is ours. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that every situation, no matter how difficult, holds the potential for growth. Imagine a tree standing tall in the forest. It faces many storms, and with each storm, it bends, its branches may break, but over time, it becomes stronger. This is a simple yet profound metaphor for our own lives. Toxic people, like storms, can shake us, but they do not have to destroy us. In fact, if we use the right mindset, we can learn and grow from these encounters. Buddha once said, "In the confrontation between the stream and the rock, the stream always wins, not by strength, but by persistence." This quote teaches us an important lesson. Perseverance in the face of adversity leads to growth. When we encounter toxic people, we are given the opportunity to practice patience, tolerance, and self-awareness. These are not easy qualities to develop, but they are essential for inner peace. A challenge arises when someone's negativity affects us. Perhaps they criticize us, belittle us, or manipulate us emotionally. But rather than falling into the trap of reacting with anger or frustration, we have the choice to pause, reflect, and respond from a place of mindfulness. This is the true power of Buddhist teachings. It's about seeing beyond the surface, understanding the root causes of toxic behavior, and choosing a response that aligns with our inner peace. In those moments when someone's toxicity feels overwhelming, we can ask ourselves, what is this situation teaching me? How can I learn from this encounter to become a better, stronger person? This simple question transforms the situation from one of victimhood into one of opportunity. It shifts our perspective from helplessness to empowerment. Consider this. When we're faced with negativity, we often want to push it away, to avoid it at all costs. But avoidance doesn't bring true peace. Avoidance creates more resistance, and resistance leads to more suffering. Buddhism teaches us that the key is not to fight against what is, but to accept it with mindfulness and compassion. By doing so, we not only protect ourselves from being affected by negativity, but also create the space for growth. When we choose to see toxic people as teachers rather than enemies, we begin to shift our perspective. They are opportunities in disguise. Through these encounters, we learn to strengthen our boundaries, increase our emotional resilience, and deepen our understanding of compassion. It's not about changing the toxic person, it's about changing ourselves. And in changing ourselves, we change how we relate to others. The teachings of Buddhism also emphasize the importance of non-attachment. When we are attached to our expectations, to how we think people should behave or how situations should unfold, we set ourselves up for suffering. Toxic people thrive on manipulation because they sense our attachments. They know how to push our buttons, how to play on our fears and insecurities. But if we let go of these attachments, if we no longer cling to the idea that things should be different, we free ourselves from their power. We stop being controlled by their actions. To practice non-attachment, we must first become aware of our triggers. What is it that makes us react? Is it a certain behavior, a word, a look? Once we identify our triggers, we can begin to let go of our emotional attachment to them. This doesn't mean we become indifferent or numb. It means we choose not to let these things dictate our responses. We become the master of our emotions, rather than being controlled by external forces. Another essential part of dealing with toxic people is understanding that everyone is on their own journey. They, too, are facing their own challenges and suffering. In Buddhism, this is called the concept of dukkha, or suffering. Just as we experience pain and discomfort in our lives, so do others. Often, toxic behaviors arise from unresolved pain or trauma. By recognizing this, we cultivate compassion for those who may be causing harm. This doesn't mean we tolerate their behavior, but it allows us to respond with empathy rather than anger. Imagine a person who is rude or manipulative. Instead of reacting with frustration, we might pause and think, what are they struggling with? Why are they acting this way? This doesn't excuse their behavior, but it helps us to see them as human beings rather than as enemies. This shift in perspective frees us from the emotional grip of their toxicity. The Buddha taught that by letting go of our attachments to outcomes, we can find peace even in the most challenging situations. When we stop trying to control how others behave, we release the tension that keeps us trapped in negative emotions. Letting go of the need for others to change allows us to find peace within ourselves. Now, let's talk about forgiveness. Forgiveness is not about condoning harmful behavior. It's about freeing ourselves from the burden of resentment. Toxic people often leave us with feelings of anger, betrayal, or hurt. These feelings can fester within us, eating away at our inner peace. But forgiveness is a powerful tool for healing. It allows us to release the negative energy that we hold on to, and in doing so, we create space for growth. Buddha once said, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. This is a simple yet powerful reminder that harboring resentment only harms ourselves. When we forgive, we are not doing it for the other person. We are doing it for ourselves. Forgiveness is an act of self-care. It doesn't mean that we accept the toxic behavior, but it allows us to move forward without being weighed down by past hurts. In the face of toxic people, we must also remember the importance of self-compassion. It's easy to get lost in the emotional turmoil of difficult relationships, but we must not forget to be kind to ourselves. Take time to care for your own emotional and mental well-being. Practice self-love and recognize your own worth. When we are kind to ourselves, we become less susceptible to the negativity of others. When we approach toxic people with the mindset of growth, we can transform these relationships into powerful opportunities for self-discovery. Every encounter, every challenge, teaches us something valuable. It is through these lessons that we become stronger, more resilient, and more compassionate. In the end, the greatest transformation is not in changing others, but in changing ourselves. Through mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, we can navigate any relationship, toxic or not, with grace and peace. We can turn every challenge into an opportunity for growth, and in doing so, we create a life of inner harmony, free from the influence of negativity. Conclusion: embracing positivity and letting go of negativity. Sit with me for a moment. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in, and let it go. Do you feel that? The stillness in your breath, the calmness in this moment, that is your true self. And that is where our journey together has been leading you. To a place of stillness, peace, and freedom from the weight of toxic people and their negativity. You see, life is like a flowing river. Along its course, there are rocks, debris, and obstacles. Toxic people are like those rocks. They may disrupt the flow for a moment, but the river continues to move. It does not stop to fight the obstacles. It simply flows around them, embracing its natural rhythm. You are that river. Your peace, your joy, your inner strength. These are your waters. They flow endlessly, no matter what or who stands in their path. Through this journey, we've explored many ways to deal with toxicity in your life. We've looked at mindfulness, compassion, detachment, and the power of forgiveness. But now, at the end of this path, let us pause and ask, what have we truly learned? What wisdom will you carry forward? First, remember this truth. You cannot control how others behave, but you can control how you respond. Toxic people often pull you into their chaos, but you do not have to accept their invitation. In Buddhism, this is called upaya, skillful action. It means choosing your response with awareness and wisdom. When someone speaks harsh words, pause. Do not react with anger. Instead, observe. Like the river, let their negativity flow past you without disturbing your peace. Second, understand that boundaries are acts of self-love. Setting boundaries is not an act of rejection. It is an act of protection. Protect your energy, protect your mind, and protect your heart. This is not selfishness. It is kindness toward yourself. The Buddha taught that compassion must begin with oneself. How can you offer peace to the world if your own heart is in turmoil? Third, let go. Let go of the anger, the resentment, and the pain that toxic people may have caused. Forgiveness does not mean you agree with their actions. It simply means you refuse to carry the burden of their negativity any longer. Imagine holding a burning coal in your hand. It is not hurting the person you resent. It is only burning you. Let it go. Free yourself. Now, here's the most important lesson of all. You are not alone. Toxic people may isolate you, make you doubt yourself, or drain your spirit. But you are part of something much greater. You are part of the universe's vast web of life. You are connected to everything and everyone. When you cultivate peace within yourself, you contribute to the peace of the whole world. This is the essence of Buddhist wisdom. So, how do we embrace positivity and move forward? Start small. Every morning, take a moment to be grateful. Gratitude is the antidote to negativity. Look at the sunrise, feel the wind on your face, and be thankful for another day to live, to grow, and to love. Every evening, reflect on the kindness you've given and received. These simple practices will nurture your heart and shield you from toxic energy. Let us also remember the power of loving kindness, or metta. When you encounter toxic people, silently wish them well. Say to yourself, may you be happy. May you be free from suffering. This does not excuse their behavior, but it helps you release the grip of anger and resentment. It allows you to stay grounded in compassion, even when faced with negativity. As we conclude this journey together, I want you to carry this thought in your heart. Peace is not something you find outside of yourself. It is not dependent on others, nor can it be taken away by them. Peace is your nature. It is within you, always. Like the river, like the sky, like the breath, you are free, and you are whole. Before you go, let me share this final teaching. The Buddha once said, you yourself, as much as anyone in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. So, treat yourself with kindness. Be gentle with your heart. And remember, no matter how dark the world may seem, your light is enough to shine through it. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If these teachings have touched your heart or brought clarity to your mind, I invite you to stay connected. There are so many views on this channel, but only 0.2% subscribe. So please, like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wisdom Woven to support this space of wisdom and peace. Together, let us continue to weave a life of compassion, joy, and understanding. Now, take one more deep breath in, and as you exhale, let go of all that no longer serves you. Your journey does not end here. It begins anew with each breath, each moment, and each choice you make.